Hello, Philip here from Trial by Stone. Before we get into this episode, I just wanted to let you know that this episode, of course, we'd be discussing about episode 8 of the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, but we also do, we do get a bit off topic at times, so we do talk about a couple little things. So I just wanted to let you know that, we do talk spoilers, of course, with the J.M. Lee young adult novels, but also with Star Wars The Mandalorian. Just wanted to give you a heads up in case if you don't like to be spoiled about things you haven't seen. Enjoy the show.
Another world. Another time.
In the age of wonder.
You are listening to
Trial by Stone.
Trial by Stone!
Dea, Tea, Dara, Tea.
Your vital essence, the Dark Crystal.
Kida.
Come, see for yourself.
Aru, Garu.
How very interesting.
Dea, Tea. I feel the song of Thra in my heart. Now go, you heroes of Thra.
Hello and welcome to Trial by Stone. This is the Dark Crystal podcast. I'm your host, Philip.
And I'm Jamie.
And I'm Ethan.
And we're all here to talk about the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. And as you probably know, every second week we've been doing these roundtable sort of discussion shows, talking about everything that happens, within the episode of the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. For those of you who are new, just want to let you know, of course, that there's going to be spoilers. I mean, the show's been out for a good couple of months, so we'll probably be talking about the show as a whole, but we will be, sort of talking about each episode like as it is. I mean, there's a lot to cover, like, as I always say, in every episode, there's so much that happens in these episodes, so, we're going to break it all down and have some theories and speculations and all that kind of stuff. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun as continue discussing about Age of Resistance. I guess before we get started, I mean, have you both been anyways, Ethan and Jamie? Because I know it's been just a couple of days ago. You had your Thanksgiving. Like, how's everything been going with yourselves during this time?
Friggin' miserable, man. I've been fighting this cold for like 2 weeks. I can't breathe. It's awful.
You sound really good.
Oh, thank you. I keep muting the microphone to cough. Like, I'm a ninja. Other than fighting this cold, I'm doing great. Everybody's great. Everything's great. I had a good Thanksgiving, and that was pretty fun. How's Jamie doing?
I'm okay. Let's see. My God, it's been... So my other podcast, the Shoulder of Orion podcast, threw a live event 2 weeks ago. So I was in downtown Los Angeles for 4 days. And then a few days later... Cool. Yeah, and then 3 days later I moved. And so I moved up into the mountains. And I'm looking at my gorgeous view right now, so it's great. And then I went to the Chicago/Indiana area for my grandmother's 90th birthday. And then I came back and spent Thanksgiving all by myself, which was fine. I worked. And yeah, so now I'm here and I'm broke, but I'm okay.
I mean, for myself, it's just been a pretty busy month in general. Just with life and just really get things ready for the end of the year. As like I'll be going away, on holiday, have a bit of a break for around the Christmas time. So it's really just planning everything for that. But yeah, it's been good to sort of get us all back. Because we do record these episodes in advance. So for us to sort of get back together and keep talking Dark Crystal, it's always fun times.
Indeed. I'm happy to be back. I'm excited to talk about it. Of course, I haven't been watching the show as much as I was, but I can't stop thinking about it. That's for sure. I can't stop thinking about it. It's affected, Age of Resistance has really affected how I frame the original film. And it's so heavy, like with the original film, I don't know if we talked about this before, I don't know about you guys, but with the original film, I could throw that film on and have it playing in the background every day, all day. No big deal. I could watch it every day. It's sort of heavy, but it's not that heavy. It's not that dark. Whereas Age of Resistance is so dark and heavy and so full of so many things. It's not something that I can put on in the background. It demands my attention. And it's emotionally really tough to get through in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a kind of show, like, I mean, especially these days with sort of that second screen experience that, you know, that people, you know, watching at home, sometimes they'll maybe like, oh, checking their phone or, you know, doing a bit of multitasking, you know, with their other screens or devices while watching, you know, the show, you know, a TV show, for example. But you can't really do that with this show with Age of Resistance. You got to give it your focus and your attention because, yeah, so much happens. It's pretty incredible. So, I mean, and also, I mean, before we get into discussing about episode 8, I mean, we might as well, you know, talk about, I mean, we've still been waiting to hear for news about whether a season 2 is going to happen or not. Things are still up in the air, it just seems at the moment. I sort of had some theories about if we did hear any announcements, and my only theories that I could think of that if we did get any announcements would be either sometime in December, close to sort of the anniversary of the original film. Either that or possibly in January, during like the Netflix's next quarterly results for the fourth quarter of 2019, which will be in January 2020. Because I know that was a big thing last time. I think back in episode 5, I think when we were discussing about this, that we really thought that we were going to hear a lot of news about the show from the third quarterly results. But, you know, they didn't announce any numbers or any of that sort of stuff. And the more I thought about it, I thought maybe that was because they wanted to give more, you know, focus and attention to Stranger Things, which, I mean, that show's been doing extremely well. And being the show had come out, you know, during that third quarterly as well. So I'm not too sure whether that was sort of another reason that we didn't hear the numbers. So that's why I'm just hoping that maybe January, I feel like January at the latest, that we might hopefully hear, you know, the future of the show. I don't know what your thoughts are, Jamie and Ethan.
Half of me is, you know, a little sweaty and worried. The other half is like, you know, there's still some time. You know, like, you know, Umbrella Academy was renewed, a month, like 45 days after its premiere. But there's other shows that I used to know that do not come to mind right now that were renewed about 110, 120 days after their premiere. So right now we're about 95 days after AOR has premiered. So we're still, I mean, it's been a hot minute, but I still think we just need to keep watching it, and a little patience will go a long way. You know, we'll hear something soon, I think. You know, like there is a little bit of sweat on my brow. I'm like, come on, give me something. But I'm not really panicking yet. You know, if we get into, you know, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months later and still nothing, that's going to be a little weird. But yeah, I'm just trying to be patient and try not to think about it. I'm sure Netflix is probably, you know, with Disney Plus, I wonder if they're just, you know, shifting some gears around. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, should we, you know, what shift this over here, do that? You know, what kind of shows are we, do we want to focus on? And I feel like Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance is something, you know, like Disney Plus and Hulu or, you know, everything else, they don't have anything comparable to AOR, in my opinion. I mean, to me, it would be a great investment but then again, I don't know what the numbers are. I don't know. They do, we don't, and so I guess it's, you know, it's in their hands. I really hope they renew it, but, you know, we'll just be patient and we'll find out soon. I really think we'll find out in just, you know, next couple weeks.
I would agree. I actually think that they probably will announce season 2 on December 17th. And I think what they're doing is it's going to be kind of like a Christmas gift. I do think that they're going to renew the show. I think this season 2, it will end for sure. I do not think it will go past a season 2. I think it's a very limited series just because of the cost and the people involved and all sorts of things. But I also think and fully believe that Netflix understands that they have a piece of art in their hands. It's not going to be like Stranger Things. It's more like artwork that's been lauded by critics and fans alike. That is a rare gift. So I believe that Netflix is in this to finish the story, and I think they're going to announce it on December 17th.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope so too. I mean, because that's the thing. Age of Resistance is unlike any other show. It is so unique, and it's just so incredible. Just the work that's, to do 10 episodes of, full-on puppetry is just pretty incredible stuff, what they were able to accomplish with the show. That's the thing. Like, it would be such a shame if it didn't get renewed and, we didn't get the full story, didn't get wrapped up, that sort of thing. Because, I mean, the Dark Crystal, it is it's been awesome that we've been getting a lot of, other mediums, like with the comics, which is cool, actually, because we're actually getting at least, these Dark Crystal comics every month. And then we got some, we had some books that came out during November as well, which we'll definitely talk about, in future episodes of the podcast. So, I mean, it's been good that at least the Age of Resistance is still out there, that, either people watching it or people discovering it, in these different mediums that then discovered the show. So, I mean, that's been really cool. But, like, with this story, I think it has to be, told, in this, visual medium. So, again, I really hope that Netflix, they give the Jim Henson Company, here you go, give them season 2 and be able to wrap up the story. And even if we have to wait till 2022 to get the story, but I mean, they could do it in a way that they can really pitch as like, well, this is 40 years in the making, just getting to know the story, 40 years in the making, how it all happens. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely certain, hopefully, that we'll get that season 2. But yeah, as of now, we just haven't heard anything. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely hoping December or January, I would think. Yeah, we will.
I really agree with you, Jamie. I never even thought about it, but it was on December 17th a year ago that we got the first pictures of Rayanne, Brea, and Deet. So Netflix does have a precedence for really, doing something for Dark Crystal's birthday. So I didn't even think of that. I dig that. So yeah, keep an eye out for Netflix saying something on December 17th. I mean, we don't know for sure, but like I said, there's a precedence for it. So that'll be really fun.
And if they renew it, we're going to hear about it on December 17th. If they don't, we're not going to hear a word on December 17th. That's my... or maybe they'll just say, it's Dark Crystal's birthday, watch Age of Resistance, something like that, some type of promotional whatever.
Oh, God, you're right.
But I also think that there's a couple of interesting things happening right now in the streaming world as it relates to puppetry. And, of course, the elephant in the room, or the baby in the room, the baby elephant, is Baby Yoda in The Mandalorian. And what's really cool about that is the puppet in The Mandalorian is a puppet. It is not digital. It is not CGI. It is all puppet. And the show is being really well received. It is taken over as the #1 streaming show. It's taken over Stranger Things. It's getting really great reviews, and it's again bringing puppetry to the forefront. And of course, there's an article about what's that actor's name? He's Finnish.
Werner Herzog.
Yeah, Werner Herzog. He is on the record saying, "I called them cowards for wanting to go CGI with Baby Yoda as opposed to actually, no, use this puppet. It's amazing." And they use the puppet. And so a lot of people are talking about puppetry. And it's sort of all coming back. And I think Netflix is a little responsible for that right now. So I think for the sake of integrity, all they can do is win. Even if they didn't get the viewership, all they can do is win. Because if you think about the Dark Crystal, how did it come be successful in years after the original release? Home video sales, word of mouth, cult following. And I think Age of Resistance will follow right in suit with that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, especially like, with puppets really coming back in a huge way. And I mean, Dark Crystal sort of, spearheaded the way, and, now that there's going to be, quite a few things, I mean, implementing more of that puppetry. And I mean, we sort of had that, in The Last Jedi as well. But yeah, it's really cool. I think we're just sort of getting back to people, we want to, see these characters for real. We don't want to see, characters as CGI, or, only using them in the rare instances where it's like they have to use it, or that, there isn't a way that they can make some things, practical to that effect. Yeah. So I think we've definitely got a lot to look forward to. But yeah, I think, overall would definitely, hopefully stay tuned to December. And I mean, Dark Crystal's social media, they're always posting something every day on a daily basis. So which is really cool to see that all happening as well. We might as well talk about this episode. We're up to episode 8. And I think the episode is called Prophets Don't Know Everything. This was sort of like a very kind of fun show. I mean, with especially at the start when you had Olga and Seladon are sort of conversing, and Seladon's really going to go to the Castle of the Crystal, and she's really believing in her cause, and Seladon, and Olga's like, no, don't listen to the Skeksis or all that kind of stuff. And I actually liked, pretty much the whole episode where Olga just pretty much stuck in Stone in the Wood the whole time, and pretty much her eye was sort of traveled along with Seladon, going to the Castle of the Crystal and just following along with Seladon the whole time. I thought that was kind of a neat little thing, especially with her eye.
Yeah, there's something, I'm overthinking it, but, Augur throws the eye into Seladon's bag and follows her. And, my stupid brain's like, okay, so I understand that Augur can see everything that's going on, but how can she hear, okay? How can she hear? That's what I want to know. She can't hear through the eye. She needs to throw an ear in that bag, too. I mean,
but Augur is magical, though. I mean, she's not just flesh and blood; she's spirit. So it's
my
a leap you can
headcanon
make.
Says she's reading lips. She's reading lips.
Or either that, or her eyes have like built-in subtitles, or that can transcribe, everything that's being said. So, she just sees those subtitles like on her bottom.
I buy that. I have
like she's watching her own
I
Dark
have
Crystal
to watch
show.
shows with subtitles. I don't know why, so I buy that. I can see that.
That is the thing. I actually do watch, probably on second viewings, I do watch shows like with subtitles just to get some, not so clarification, but just more like if there's any dialogue that was missing. Because, there's a lot of dialogue in this show in particular. So there's always a couple lines that's like, could you easily miss by, that sort of thing. And one of the examples, even with dialogue, I was just thinking about it, especially in this episode with Skeksis. I really just love his vocabulary in the show. For example, so many words that he says are so unique. You got your ambrosial or lackadaisy, so many of these other words I'm trying to pronounce, but I'm doing a pretty horrible job. Lackadaisical lumps, splendiferous rejuvenation, malcontent. That I definitely think the writers, they must have a lot of fun. Writing dialogue, but also with Skeksis, especially with his vocabulary for certain. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the original Dark Crystal was so limited because the dialogue was written to match the puppets' movements. And you could really tell that, now that the shackles were off, they were really trying to expand the vocabulary of all the Skeksis, not just Skeksis. And I adore that. It is so much fun to hear everything that everybody says. It's not just Skeksis that has just the most ridiculous words. Everybody's got a thesaurus in their back pocket in this show, and it's so much fun.
Yeah, they could easily just make a book of here's the Dark Crystal Dictionary of all these unique words, and it's almost I was learning a couple words a day just by with the dialogue with the Skeksis in particular, which has been which has been really cool. And I guess one thing as well, Jamie. Your favorite character, Hup, of course. I guess, because his story almost sort of essentially ended in episode 8 in a way, because, when he got injured from the Hunter from episode 7, and he pretty much stays at the Circle of the Suns for the next remaining episodes. Of course, I know he appears in episodes 9 and 10, and I just thought, at the time watching the show, were you sort of bummed about, we're not going to get Hup continuing the journey with Deet and Rian, and sort of eventually, being part of that Stone in the Wood sort of battle?
No, I didn't miss him just because I felt like it was appropriate. I mean, he got hurt, he's recovering, but really episode 8 is all about Seladon, and really the show after episode 7, it really like ups the ante. Like when episode 8 is happening, we're pushed into high drama, and of course you have the whole discussion between Seladon and Aughra in Stone in the Wood, and it's really engrossing, and you're really taken by this Gelfling who is unable or / probably unwilling to see what everyone else sees and can attest to, and she's so into her viewpoint, her point of view, that she's sort of become a version of the Skeksis, and she thinks she can go and talk them into saving Gelfling or setting some free against the advice of everyone, including Aughra, because she has, she meets Aughra in Stone in the Wood, and she essentially puts her down and calls her an old witch or something like that. It's very, very engrossing, and the story is really taking like the darkest of darkest turns. You have, people in prison at the castle, and the world feels like it's going to be ending soon. It just feels very dire for everyone involved, at least as it relates to Stone in the Wood and the Caves of Grot and all of our main characters and where they're from. So having to deal with all that, I don't really think, oh, I miss Hup, because I feel like this is where the stories, because we're always jumping back and forth between storylines, even though everyone's a part of the same story. So I'm pretty engrossed in where we're at that point. And then by the time, Hup doesn't really make an appearance again. He does sort of, but not really. Like, I know he's trying to wake up Irva. So he's in it for a little bit, but he, at that point in time, has served his purpose. He accompanied them to the Circles of the Seven Suns. Is that what it's called? Circle of the Seven Suns?
Circle of the Suns.
Circle of the Suns. Okay. And yeah, so it's very interesting, but also about episode 8, which I find fascinating, is the POV. We enter the castle in a way we have never seen the castle before, even though we've been in the castle essentially since the beginning of the show. We're entering the castle as Aughra's eye, so it's lower to the ground. Everything seems huge. Everything seems more wondrous. Just the POV of Aughra's eye and the little Arathim baby that's holding it. It's really cute. It's funny, and they're cutting back and forth between a little bit of comedy between this thing trying to keep Aughra's eye in its like holder, and the horrible, terrifying ordeal that Seladon's going through or about to go through. So I find it really, really engrossing.
Because I'm like, it's weird because the more I'm watching the show, it's like I'm loving Seladon so much more. Just the sort of the conflict that she has, not so much the conflict, but just, especially when she meets the Skeksis, and she's willing to do lots of things, for them. It's like, you could sacrifice some Gelflings or all that kind of stuff, and then of course, with Skeksis, every time, he's just saying no to her, and then they sort of reveal about, that they've been draining essence, and she's just been once she sort of hears about it, and it's just really shocking. And especially that scene where they're all sort of, surrounding her, taking off sort of her facade, I guess, that the dark sort of, so, that Skeksis sort of dress that, with the crown that was sort of shaped as the Castle of the Crystal. That was like really shocking. And I remember like watching the episode, and I was really concerned about, are they actually going to, go, even further? Like, especially like with the original film with Skeksis, that with his banishment, they just took all his clothes out. And I was like really sort of fearing about something like that was going to happen to Seladon. But luckily, I mean, it only just got to, that they just ripped off just her Skeksis, sort of her dress, that sort of thing. So, but yeah, I mean, that was a moment where I was like, ooh, I was really fearing for her, yeah.
I really thought in that scene they were going to murder her. Like all of them were going to be stabbing her with daggers. That was my fear. I wasn't thinking they were going to tear her clothes off. I just was like, this is going to be bloody. And it wasn't. I mean, they stayed away from it. Also, it's sort of child-friendly to some degree. But I mean, even still, how they treated her and the movement of the camera of them around her, it was terrifying.
I really thought they were going to strip her too. As a nod to the original, but I'm really glad they didn't, because, that's what your brain does, is you're always trying to connect to that original film, and that would have been a bad idea if they did that, because, that's the trap. We've talked about it ad nauseum, like that trap of when you're doing a prequel or a sequel of constantly, doing some scene that rhymes with something from the original, and when every scene's like that, it's an eye roller, and
yeah, like you don't want to push it too far. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we sort of had that actually a little bit, especially with Skektek and Olgra, which I think, well, I'll definitely say that for episode 9. But that was another example that I think we sort of had that little moment between them two, and I think Skeksis says, another world, another time. There was sort of a bit of a homage to the opening words of the original film. Yeah.
I don't think that was tasteful to me. It surprised me, but I think AOR really is very tasteful with its homages. It really could have, and I know we've discussed this before, it really could have gone overboard, because it's just an easy trap. It's lazy writing when you just, it'd just be easy just to, hold every scene up with a little bit of nostalgia, but it does not. I bet at the first viewing it's fun, but it really puts a nasty taste in your mouth in the future. It's like, oh, come on, and that's what I love about AOR is, they really, they're very tasteful with the nostalgia. It's really just sprinkle in here and there just to give it a little bit more flavor, but everything feels so original and new, and I dig it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, like I don't know, like there hasn't been a moment where I'm just like, oh, I do not like this at all. The things that that wasn't pretty much wasn't a huge fan of. I mean, which sort of in this episode, we sort of got the story sort of wrapped up, with the Aratham and the Ascendancy. Originally, they were attacking the caves of Grot, trying to reclaim their home, which sort of ends up, which was pretty much a trap for them, essentially, because of the darkening that's been spreading throughout the caves. So it was sort of like a win-win for the Skeksis at the time. But once the Aratham sort of find out about the truth, that they decide, okay, Gelfling, yeah, I guess you're right, and we'll definitely join your side to take over, to try and defeat the Skeksis, which I thought was, which I sort of, with that sort of story thread, I'm sort of like, threaders, that it was cool that, the way the story, sort of wrapped up. But, overall, but there wasn't anything that I'm like, oh, I do not like this at all. Like, everything was just done so good, and it was just unbelievable. Yeah.
To that point that you're making, Phil, and you're touching on too, Ethan, it's something that I've really been thinking about a lot in terms of how original Age of Resistance is. How, like you said, Ethan, it does not rely on nostalgia to prop up the story. It relies on the story to prop up the story. There are hints and flourishes and maybe some sentences here and there, or like, okay, we go into the Podling village and it's familiar, but that's all it is. There's something completely different happening in that space at the moment. And I've been thinking about Age of Resistance quite a bit. Just, you said one thing, Ethan, about you can watch something that's sort of bathed in nostalgia, and the first time you're like, oh wow, this is great, and then the second time you're like, I don't know. And I was thinking about that as it relates to The Force Awakens, and how I saw that film like 4 times in the theater, and then I recently saw it again about a month ago, and I was like, I'm bored to death. There's nothing that new in this story, and that's a shame. And it goes back to the writers of Age of Resistance. These people knew what they were doing, and it was a risk that they were taking. And I think to tell an original story is essentially taking a risk. And we live in a time where everyone is pivoting to nostalgia. I mean, we just saw that E.T. sequel-esque advertising. It's like a 4-minute short film starring Henry Thomas, who was Elliot in the original, with an animatronic E.T. It was very, very lovely. But it was all propped up by nostalgia, and we're seeing things we've seen before. And again, Age of Resistance does not do this. They do not do this. There might be some vaguely similar mirroring or dynamics in terms of the way characters might be getting along or the journey that they're on, but it's just like a vague mirroring. It's just vague enough to feel familiar, but not feel like we've seen it again. And because Star Wars is in public consciousness right now in terms of The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, we're about to see the rise of Skywalker. And I just watched The Last Jedi again recently, and I noticed so much how The Last Jedi is couched in the visuals and the storytelling of Empire Strikes Back, beat for beat in some ways. And it's still, I enjoyed it more. And I know, obviously, I'm not here to talk about Star Wars. I'm trying to relate this back to Age of Resistance, that I have never felt that way with Age of Resistance. And I think about, because we're talking about Episode 8, like with Seladon's return to the castle and her discussion with Aughra. It's not, there's so much world building, there's so much new, there's so much architecture in terms of story that's happening in every episode. It's just, and I don't mean to say this to make people feel good, but it is brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant. It's just even the stuff that I'm sort of like, I'm not too sure of, like the Aratham, like we are, what is it? What do they say? We are
the Ascendancy.
We are the Ascendancy, and I have some problems with that. It feels like Star Trek. But aside from that, I mean, even still, I can say that and also say this show's a masterpiece. It is note perfect, and I can't say that much about a lot of things that even parts of Stranger Things feels like nostalgia for the sake of nostalgia. Age of Resistance does not commit that crime ever.
No, it's just so unique. I mean, I think probably the benefit that this show really had is, I mean, they've been working on the show for years and years, in various forms and stuff. So I think they had a lot of time of development to really just get the show right. And it's just, again, it's just another, get all these incredible moments. I mean, especially, one of your favorite scenes from the original film was when Kira and Jen, when Kira flies or glides down the chasm with Jen and with Vizgig, with her wings, sort of that big reveal. And we sort of, there was sort of got a little bit of that moment, that familiarity, that nostalgic, but it isn't like, it's just the same old thing, with Deet as she's actually she's holding on to Rian, and they're flying through the breath of Thra to get to the Caves of Grot. And again, that was just such a fantastic moment, within the show. I love, she says, try not to scream, it scares the holobats, and just having her wings open, and being able to see Gelfling fly, because in the original film, with Dark Crystal, for Kira, it was only to extent of gliding, but seeing them really fly and just it's just really magical.
I just wanted to say this a minute ago. I'm sorry. I know we're not here to talk Star Wars, but I wanted to say, and I mean this in all seriousness, And I love to see comments like in the group or on the Trial by Stone page, what other people think of this idea. But like serious talk, if Jeff Addis, Will Matthews, and Javier Grillo Marxwatch got together and wrote a Star Wars film, and Louis Leterrier directed it, I really think you'd get magic happening. Especially those three writers, I think they working together makes magic happen, you know? The whole writer's room was amazing, but, the first viewing of all 10 episodes of AOR, I immediately thought, what if these people touched Star Wars? They would be absolutely incredible. And, Star Wars and Dark Crystal, they're cousins, or siblings in a way to me. Yoda and his origins through Jim Henson and all that. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out. I want to hear what other people think of that, because I think that they could really make a really cool original story. Like we talked, I think they could make something that feels like Star Wars without falling into that nostalgia trap. And I kind of feel like Star Wars has been doing that a lot, but I'll leave that alone. Oh, go ahead.
But you make a really good point, Ethan. I just want to mention a quote from Kathleen Kennedy, and we're talking about it, so whatever. Kathleen Kennedy went on record recently in an interview for Variety or for Rolling Stone or someone, and she's talking about how difficult it has been to tell these stories because they don't have all the source material and blah, 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 which in fact they have books and books and books and books and comic after comic after. I mean, Star Wars has so much source material, you could probably fill 10 rooms with how much source material or other legends or mythology. And I relate this back to Jeff and Will and Javier and Louis and Lisa Henson and Hallie Stanford. Dark Crystal also has source material, and they've been releasing the mangas and the comics. And of course, we have The World of the Dark Crystal, the book that came out in the 80s, which was then republished. There's so much there. Not tons, but enough. And what did they do? Those writers went to that material and said, what can we find from here? How do we build this world? And they built a world. They created a world. So it can be done. You can tell original stories. You just have to know what you're doing. And those guys and girls, ladies, know what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But yeah, I mean, I definitely would love to see, I'd love to know what, like Will and Jeff and Javier and Louis and, everyone, I'd love to know what they'll do next. And I mean, even I was thinking about that probably a couple of days ago. I'm like, I think Louis could, I would love for him to direct a Star Wars movie. Like, it would be so cool. And especially with Jeff and Will, like, I mean, what they were able to develop with this show, sort of really, I mean, enhancing the world of Thra. I mean, like you said, with all these different materials that they had, I mean, especially with, because this was originally developed as an animated series, so they had sort of developments from that, and also through Joe's books, to an extent, that they were like, well, we've got this material, based on this sort of prequel before the events of the film, The Dark Crystal. And it's like, well, how do we push it even more? And yeah, I mean, that's certainly what they did. They really, ramped it up to 11.
Yeah, and it's not like this was their first idea. It's not like these, super fans came together and like, this is our passion project. This is they originally approached Henson, Addison Matthews did, to talk about Labyrinth, and they said, oh, we're actually doing Dark Crystal, so switch gears real fast. And they did. And I mean, they all did such an amazing job, and I just think, if someone threw a Star Wars project at them, I'm sure they could cobble together some gold there too. I really think, as far as I know, these writers really came out of nowhere, but they're very talented. They're very, I think they're going to do some great things even after AOR. And like we said, Louis would do really good in Star Wars. Louis is going to go to great places too. I'm sure of it. What am I talking about? He's done great things, but he's going to continue on that great path.
Yeah, I mean, he's created a show that is not just using the name of Jim Henson; it's worthy of the name Jim Henson. Who else is going to be able to accomplish that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you're never going to see, George Lucas's Star Wars.
It would be interesting to find out what Frank Oz feels about the series. Yeah, he hasn't. I don't know if he's talked about it or if he's seen it. I mean, it's fodder for another episode, but eventually we can talk about that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I haven't heard anything, but yeah, I'd definitely be something I'd definitely be interested in knowing, like what he thought of the show, because haven't heard anything from him or based on his tweets, that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely something for down the track. And so I guess we probably need to talk about one of the big moments from episode 8. Which was, I mean, so many moments, of course, but I mean, especially towards the end of episode 8, where the sanctuary tree, is slowly dying with the darkening, and you're seeing the Nurlocs are sort of chomping at the tree to bits, with the Nurlocs being affected by the darkening as well, and it's just becoming too much for the tree. And Deet's, as always, she wants to figure out, what can I do? What can I do to help? And it gets to the point where that the tree decides to, give her like sort of the abilities, but also sort of essentially like transferring the darkening to Deet, and as well as seeing all these visions for these visions potentially of the future. I mean, I think it's interesting that we sort of got a little bit of this in the first episode, and pretty much all the visions came to be true. So we're sort of at a point where I think, are these visions are going to be something that we might potentially see in a season 2 of the show. Just wanted to know your thoughts about that, Ethan.
Yeah, this vision has stumped me. We see Deet sitting on the Emperor's throne. We see Rian healing the crystal. Well, not healing the crystal, but putting a shard into the wound in the crystal. And then, Brea running through a forest being chased by a Gartham. And if anything, it's Brea and the baby that really makes any sort of sense. Like, oh, okay, that's most likely, implying that that's Kira's mom, and that's the moment we saw in the film. But everything else just blows my mind. I'm like, okay, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. I do not understand what's happened to Deet. She's got these new abilities, and she's changed now. But what is she, And are these visions of the future? Are they all destined to come true? I feel like the Deet on the throne is more symbolic, I mean, what else could that be? Like her sitting on the throne, I guess maybe to taunt the Skeksis. I don't know. What do you guys think? I don't know.
I mean, like for me, I was more thinking about with Rian, putting the shard into the place, and what could that mean? If it was successful but didn't work out, or like there's many theories behind it, whether it's a different timeline, which I don't think I'm not a I don't think about it could be from a different timeline or a different alternate sort of take of where Rian saves the day or saves the world essentially. And I mean, like with Rian, I mean there's a couple of options that could happen. It's either one, that's the real shard and he saves the world. Option 2 could be that it's the wrong shard, that it just doesn't fit at all. Or the third option, which I'm thinking could be the case, is whether that is the real shard, but it's just the wrong time. It's just, like he that is the shard, but it's just the wrong time. That you can't do this right now. That you got to wait for the three suns to appear, or that sort of thing. So yeah, there's a lot of sort of thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in that.
Yeah. Because I know like there's always been like all these in creation myths about like, you know, with Olga and Ronep, like they were collecting shards for, you know, many trine, that sort of thing, and somehow you know, the shard got into the jewel glaive that was implemented, you know, through, you know, Skeksis and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is whether whether that shard that Brea holds, you know, if that is the real true shard, which it certainly looks like it. So yeah, there's just a lot of thoughts about all these different outcomes that can potentially happen in these visions.
I think with Deet, what's interesting about her is she is essentially the ring of power incarnate. She is somewhat like Aughra, where she is a part of Thra. So, but she's both hosting the light and the dark. Whereas I think with Aughra doesn't have that struggle. Aughra is light. Aughra has been misled because she's allowed herself to be, but Deet has agreed, unfortunately and fortunately, to hold this incredible power that comes with an incredible price. And I even have this idea that perhaps she scares the Skeksis out of the castle. That's why she's on the throne, where Deet almost becomes, there's that scene in the Fellowship of the Rings where Galadriel says, instead of a Dark Lord, you shall have a queen, beautiful and treacherous as the dawn. And I think I see that happening with Deet, where she becomes this, she's lost herself and she's consumed by this power that's overwhelming to her. And perhaps the Skeksis get afraid and they take off from the castle while trying to figure out how to take back over. I mean, that's where the story could go, where Deet becomes the darkening, and it terrifies them because they don't have control over it. And yeah, that's just a possible way that it could go, because she's sitting on the throne. And I think of everything that we saw with Rianne putting the shard into the crystal, and it seems like it's not really working or it's not the right time. That's very interesting, but I'm far more interested as to what happens to Deet, and if the darkening takes her or it just allows her to live, and what kind of light that's going to be. I mean, she's scary, and I think she's scared of herself, which is why at the end of the show, which we'll talk about when we talk about episode 10, you see her wandering off alone. I mean, I think she's terrified of herself, and she's terrified of scaring other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did actually had a theory about what might potentially happen with Deet, because I mean the thing with the Sanctuary Tree, he definitely states that the darkening can only be transferred. So I sort of have a feeling whether what might happen is whether she ends up transferring the darkening to Olga. And I was thinking about this, that because, I mean, Olga is the all-powerful being of Thra, whether she would be able to contain the darkening within herself, but it also explains the sort of like why Olga acts the way she does during the Dark Crystal. I mean, especially like when she sees Jen for the first time, it's like, oh, like she was like, oh, smells like Gelfling, maybe you are a Gelfling. Like, just her mind's a bit confused, or like she, or like, in Dark Crystal, I mean, she wasn't like to Jen, oh, this is the shard. Here's the shard. It took Jen quite a bit of time to sort of to decide which of the three shards that he picked was the right one. And I felt like her mind was a bit muddled up at times, I think, during, after, whatever happens, after the events of Age of Resistance to what came, what she was like, in the Dark Crystal. And that at the end of the Dark Crystal, once the two became one, that, the podling slaves, I mean, they sort of got healed up, but so too did Olga. And that was just, I don't know, I just thought that might be something that, I don't know whether that might be a scenario where Deet somehow survives, but she ends up transferring it to Olga. Who knows? Yeah.
I thought about that too, and I really dig that. But I thought about it, and I think that hypothetically, if that did happen in season 2, I feel like that could easily feel like a rehash of season 1. Because in season 1, Aughra does almost a Jesus Christ kind of sacrifice. Like, she sacrifices her life and is literally resurrected in a flash of light. And, if she took on, all of Deet's darkness in season 2, corrupting her mind, maybe, I just feel like, as cool as that is, it would explain some things in the movie. It would just feel to me, I bet you could do it well, but to me, it would just think, if I were writing this, I would probably tell the rest of the writers room, like, but doesn't that feel like season 1 though? Like, in a bad way? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah. Oh, or just like, yeah, it's just gonna be interesting whether she's gonna ultimately sacrifice herself because with the darkening, or whether she's going to transfer it.
Because I really
to someone
don't get me
else.
wrong,
Yeah,
I really love
yeah.
that idea. I just feel like now in season 2, Aughra can only do so much because she already did like the ultimate sacrifice in season 1. So now she, in my opinion, in season 2, she has to really step back. She can't be Jesus Christ again. You know what I mean?
If anything,
now it's up. Yeah,
if anything,
up to the Gelflings.
it would make sense if there is a transfer of the darkening where Aughra's like, she's not sacrificing herself. She's saying, this is too much for you. I can hold this. Give it to me. But she knows that it's going to come at a cost. And maybe that cost is her mind, the soundness of her mind. But again, it does. But then at the same time, like you're saying, Ethan, there she is sacrificing herself. And what is important for season 2 and the story is the rich mythology that's for them continuing to do new things, not retreading things that we've seen in their season 1 or the original film, because it's all building towards the original film. How is that? Where are we going to go? And I think perhaps Aughra should take a step back in season 2 and not be as prominent as character. Who knows? I mean, she's so important to the story, but I don't know. I think eventually the darkening will take Deet. I think she'll have no choice.
Take Deet as in like Deet
Kill her.
dead? Oh my
Yes.
God! No, stop it! I'm hanging up. I'm just kidding. No, here's my theory. Whether it happens or not, who knows? But I think that the shard is going to heal Deet. The what the hell? Sanctuary tree. There we go. The sanctuary tree says the darkening is an energy that cannot be destroyed, only transferred. Like we talked about, and so I think it was kind of set up and foreshadowed in season 1. Man, I'm jumping ahead. But the shard that's in the dual glaive, and let's say it's the real true shard. It, just like the crystal, like when it stabs somebody, it almost draws their not almost, but it draws their essence into it. We see it in episode, is it 10? The general gets stabbed by the dual glaive, and his muddy little brown essence gets drawn into it. And I think that, and hell, maybe that's what Rian stabbing the crystal with a shard is symbolic of. Maybe it's not the actual crystal. Maybe he stabs her with a shard and all of the darkening goes into the shard. And then she's healed.
She's not going to make it.
Well, yeah, I think... So in a season 2, we're going to have our Gartham Wars. The Gelfling's going to be fighting against these Gartham. Deet's going to have some sort of storyline going on. I don't know what they're planning with her. No idea whatsoever. But once that arc is completed, yeah, she's either going to die at the end or she's going to get healed by the shard, in my opinion. invent die. I don't know. But that's my...
Well, that's what's looming over everybody right now is season 2. Everyone keeps saying we all know how this is going to end. So that means red-haired paladin, wiped out. That's the coming storm. So everyone's going to have to strap themselves in. Now, whether Deet and Brea and other people or other Gelflings or Hupp and everyone else, whether they make it through that crisis and they're in hiding, that's a really great possibility. And they opened that up because of the Gruneks, as we discussed before, and the idea that they thought they killed them, but they really didn't because they were in hiding. I think that possibility is wide open for season 2. So, Rianne and Brea and Deet and others can, not be killed. But I also think that good storytelling, sometimes a hero has to die. And I think one of them or more might die. And has to, I think, to make it worth it. To make what Jen and Kira do worth it. Because if they all end up living at the end of season 2, I just feel like, I don't know, the payoff of what Jen and Kira do won't be as impactful if no one loses their life. And now maybe someone loses their life, and when Jen, and maybe they somehow in season 2 cut to post world healing, maybe some of them come to life right at the end. And I don't know, that's just speculation, who knows.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely think that whether some live or some die, I think it's going to be a battle. And I think it's going to be sad to see, some of these Gelflings, like, a good majority of them, being wiped out. It's going to be shocking, really sad. But sort of, to potentially have that bit of hope that whether they do actually go into hiding. Of course, it sort of has to line up with things that happen in that Dark Crystal lore, that after the events of Dark Crystal, that Jen and Kira, they find or they restore the Gelflings. And whether that means, finding the Gelflings that sort of been in hiding, and sort of bringing them back again. So there's a lot of possibilities that can happen in the world of Thra and in the world of the Dark Crystal. So we got so much to look forward to, and I think we'll have to wrap up for this episode of Trial by Stone. Again, I want to say thank you so much, and definitely stay tuned for a lot more episodes of Trial by Stone. Trial by Stone, the Dark Crystal podcast, is a production of 3 Point Edit. If you'd like to get in contact with the show, you can do so at darkcrystalpodcast@gmail.com. You can also like us on Facebook, follow on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube. If you'd like to know more about the podcast, visit our website at www.darkcrystalpodcast.com. Thank you so much, and stay tuned for the next episode of Trial by Stone.